welcome to the Bovis and Outdoor Chronicles. My name's Jared.
And my name's Garett.
We're two brothers who love the outdoors, and we spend most of our time and all of our freedom on our adventure. From working all week.
All of our money.
What did I say?
Freedom.
All that too.
Yeah. One or the other.
Time is money?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. We spend all of our time and all our money on our weekend adventures. From working all week
to playing all weekend, we find ourselves
surviving the week to live on the weekends. So there's definitely a level of like, we were good at that, and then we got it down too well, and now it's
we're complacent.
Yeah.
We just throw it out.
We're not nervous about it. You don't have a whiteboard to write it on.
The whiteboard I missed because it kept my thoughts in line. Now they're all jumbled up here.
Well, I think that's like a mental issue. That's
that's not right.
So what do we have in front of us, Jared?
I think it's your dinner.
It's soup and some beef broth. And the reason why I put it there is our last episode, we had nothing there.
Yep.
And the whole point with this is they're sealed, they're not open, which means we're not having Teg soup.
We are not.
We were able to seal the deal on a couple things.
What do we get this year? Start from the top.
From the top.
Big game-wise. We don't need to go into all the different ducks and upland game birds.
There's one waterfowl thing I would like to mention that I hadn't got to mention yet.
You can mention that. We're going to get some hate for it. There's a flamingo at the zoo.
Great wall mount.
Yeah.
Really adds to the decor, that pink.
It does. Look great in your living room or your lawn.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, getting a flamingo mount for the yard.
I wonder how it would weather.
Probably not well.
Yeah.
All right. So, first thing, big game started, right? Antelope. We've discussed Holly got a big buck.
Mm-hmm.
I shot a doe. You shot a doe. Then the end of antelope, we went out and we talked about that previous episode being dry.
Yep. Antelope dropped all their horns.
Yep.
No elk.
Yep. And then we went on the airplane ride, dropped into some public land, which is like, this is going to be a sweet thing. And then the elk weren't in there.
Yep. Learned a lot.
After that.
Surprisingly, the deer weren't in there either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after that, we're kind of scrambling because it's like, I have the special elk tag. We need to find something.
And we're spending all our vacation. Well,
burning
not yours, but I spent all my vacation trying to find elk.
Right.
Weekend after weekend going.
So, pressure's on. Or it would have been 2 weeks ago, we recorded our episode where it's dry. We've been out hunting, been putting miles on and nothing. Well, this is the last year of vacation. We're going to go out and we're going to try it again. And we took Wednesday through Friday off, and then we had the weekend, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
And was it, I want to say it was like maybe Tuesday or something, you got a call from our local rancher friend.
Our family?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a call. And we help them brand every year. We also help them preg test. And it was Tuesday. I got a call right before we were leaving. It was like, hey, we're going to preg test this Saturday. Can you make it? And it was like, yeah, let me call you back. I just took 3 days off of work to try to find an elk, help my brother get an elk. And but, we'll make something happen. So we talked about it, made a plan, and I called him back and said, yep, I'll be up there for preg testing.
And that's one of the things that's like, it's a relative, and I enjoy just helping them out. I mean, because being able to hunt their ranch, even as much as we hunt it, it's just been an incredible opportunity for us. And
and we really grew up going there.
Yeah, it's probably nostalgic too, but it feels like a magical place. So
it does.
Anytime they ask for help, it's just like,
no question.
No questions. We'll make it work. We'll get up there. Mm-hmm. And I know there was some discussion. It's like, yeah, Saturday we have to go brand cows, and you're like, you stay up and elk hunt. I'll go and maybe get someone to help, but and I'm like, I don't know, because I mean that Teg's weighing on me, but at the same time, it's like I don't want to miss out on.
But your brother has also sunk my whole big game season into your elk. Like, you're not going to miss a day if you don't have an elk.
Hey, I wouldn't say the whole season. If we talked about last episode where you had an opportunity at a nice mature mule deer.
I did miss.
So,
yep.
there was an opportunity there. I'm not saying you strictly couldn't shoot anything.
I know, but we weren't deer hunting.
Yeah,
we were elk hunting.
that's
and
true.
It just happened.
That's true.
And I could have, if I wouldn't have missed.
So Wednesday through Sunday, basically, is what we have. We go ahead and leave
Tuesday night. We got there at like 2:30 in the morning. Never been to where we were going. Try a new place because we weren't finding elk at the other places we've been trying.
And why did we get there so late?
Oh, it was the Tyson Jake Paul fight. And you're like, I want to watch a little bit of it. It starts at 6 while playing. And I'm like, no, the other shit starts at 6.
Yeah.
They won't fight till late, and we watched that disappointing thing. The other fights were pretty good, but that was pretty disappointing. And then we left. So it was it sucked even more because we wasted all our drive time to watch that.
But we get where we're hunting and there's snow on the ground and
fresh snow, no vehicle tracks, no nothing.
So anytime you have fresh snow and no vehicle tracks, you're like, I'm in the honey hole, right?
And you'll be able to cut tracks.
Yeah. Find out where they're at.
Mm-hmm. So 2:30 in the morning, we pull up. We get out and it's cold as shit up there.
Yeah.
God, it was bone chilling. And we got to pitch the tent and set the cots and get camp set up. And we ended up going to bed about 3:30, and I believe we got up at 5:30.
Yep, 5:30.
5:30. Because we'd never been there before, so we didn't need to be anywhere before light. We just kind of got up and
needed to discover the area a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And we had our wheelers with us.
Yep. So we got up and we're like, well, this much fresh snow, we should be able to cut tracks if we ride this road, and then we'll know where to walk in and hunt. Right?
Yeah.
So, excuse me. What was the first set of tracks we cut? Because we definitely cut tracks on that road.
We must have went left. We cut elk tracks coming across the road, kind of stopping at a water tank and going up into some hills.
Right.
And also that morning when we were getting ready, just before light, somebody drove in at dark and took the right. We were parked on the left branch. They went up the right branch, which sucks, right? Like, I wish nobody was out there with us, but at least they were kind enough, and maybe they didn't even think about going our way. They might have known where they were going. But they saw our tracks in the snow from the night before and probably,
went the other way.
So when it was light, we left, and we went left, and we crossed those elk tracks, and we glassed and looked, and there was nothing moving, just those two elk tracks. So we're like, well, let's zip over the other side, and we zip over the other side, and I spotted a 4-point buck coming out of the bottom, and then we can see where they parked, and it looks like they followed some elk tracks fresh in the snow.
Yeah.
And then we drove farther, and we saw some more elk tracks, kind of going up and over
that
hill.
Looked really fresh.
Yeah,
and
big elk tracks. They weren't in like a set or two of them. And then we drove to the end of the road where it stops at private, and there was a whole bunch of elk tracks real fresh in the snow.
So it's like, okay, well, now, it's a little bit encouraging. You put all this effort out.
There's elk in here somewhere.
Well, then the snow comes, and you're getting excited, then you're cutting fresh tracks, and you're like, here it goes. And so that last bit of elk tracks we cut right before it goes to private, those look probably the freshest.
I'm like, these just happened. This was this morning, dude. And so we hopped off the wheelers and walked up. We weren't in our walking clothes. We were in our, when it's that cold out, you were bundled up. It was hard to walk. But we kind of waddled up the hill, if you will, and we just came over the top, and there was one elk. And there was more with them, but it was a calf. So, it was probably like a cow-calf group that were on the private side of the fence.
Yeah.
And so we kind of watched them run off. And, well, good. We know there's some elk in here, and hopped back on and headed back to camp undressed. And we decided to walk and follow those first elk tracks we found on the left side.
That to me, it seemed like two bulls. I mean, based on the size, and there's just a set of two tracks.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of went, okay, well, maybe this is just a small two bull elk that are hanging out. So let's walk this.
So we walked it all. There was quite a few deer tracks kind of in that area.
Yeah.
But we never saw deer, and we never saw elk.
Mm-mm.
I guess we saw some white-tailed deer down below, but just a few does, and that walk was pretty discouraging.
Yeah, then you feel it in your stomach. You're like, you get all excited. It's fresh snow, fresh tracks, and then you walk and nothing. And you're like, they have to be somewhere, but where we're hunting, elk can travel so far. So it's like, well, they were here now, but they could be 2 miles over here.
Yes.
You don't know.
Plus, the sun's out and the snow is melting.
Yeah.
So we're
it's
losing
like tracks
our info.
are diminishing. Yeah.
So we kind of stayed up in that country and glass for a bit. And in the evening, you wanted to go glass this other side of the ridge we were on, down over some farm fields and see if anything was coming out. You wanted to walk clear around, and I kind of feel like I was having gut issues or something.
I don't know. Probably just missed Holly or something. Had to go find service.
Maybe. I remember I was kind of sicked up or something was going on. Do you remember I kept stopping? Yeah. Yeah, I kept stopping, and you wanted to walk this whole thing, and I'm like, I'm not walking it. I'll ride my four-wheeler out to this point, walk, and I'll sit in glass and see if anything's moving. So we split ways there.
Yep. And
this whole time, like week after week, you're not finding an elk. We're not finding, and I'm praying. Like, I'm not a big prayer, but I was, I don't know if it's time in my life or whatnot. It just seemed like I'm doing it more often. And for that elk, I was praying a lot.
Fingers crossed and praying to the...
Yep. Praying a lot. Just let him see a bull, because we've put miles in at this point.
Yeah, well, the thought was like airplane trip, done deal, and then it's not, and then it's like we're scrambling, then we're like putting all this effort out.
We didn't really have a
find
plan B.
anything. No.
Yeah.
But I'm walking kind of this, and I'm like, wow, this is like perfect elk habitat here, and there's not a track anywhere.
And where you're at is kind of more timbered, and you could, if there was elk in there, at some point you would have seen tracks. Yeah.
Enough snow was still in that area that I would have seen tracks, but nothing. And then that's just discouraging.
You did find a lot of tracks down there, though, didn't you?
Nope, not that first day.
Yeah, that first day you came back and you told me about all these tracks.
Oh, yeah, not elk tracks.
Not elk tracks.
There was the most turkey tracks I've ever seen, and I could kind of hear them just echoing down there. So maybe I found a new turkey spot, but
it might be. I mean, the amount that 5 days we were there, the amount of turkeys we saw was unbelievable.
It was like a highway. I couldn't believe how many tracks going this way, going that way, and you could definitely tell there's like hens and like young birds. But then there's some good looking tracks, and you know me, I kind of get distracted with birds.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking for elk, and I didn't see any elk tracks on that whole walk. I mean, in the morning we cut those two we were following, and then we walked and nothing. And
they disappeared in the snow melt.
Yeah.
So we couldn't follow them where they went. But yeah, it was a lot of turkey tracks. Disappointing first night. Well, we went to bed and our slept pretty well that night.
I don't think we ate dinner that night.
No, we didn't because we were so
just tired. 2:30 to 5:30 is not enough sleep, and then walking
it gets
all
early.
Day.
5 o'clock it was dark. So I think at 6:30 you were sleeping.
Yeah.
And I was laying in bed watching my phone for a little bit before I went out. Next morning we got up and it was like, well, let's
go give her heck.
We decided to walk directly down the canyon that was next to our camp. Didn't ride whalers that day, and we did a big loop down in there, and we ended up
jumped some deer.
A few does, no bucks.
No, nothing that really got you excited or blood
I think
pumping.
that whole trip, or that day, we saw 3 deer.
Yeah,
and that was like a lot of deer.
Yeah,
we'd been seeing 1 or 2 deer, and we saw a big group of toms. I almost shot a turkey because there was no elk. We weren't seeing tracks. It was like someone's got to break the ice. That's what we kept talking about.
Always got to break. Well, at like hunting camp, someone breaks the ice and then people start shooting. And then it's kind of get your momentum going for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we were getting pretty desperate. We're like, come on, we gotta. I mean, you're putting out. It's not like we're going for like a 10-minute walk. We're walking all day, and you're putting out all this effort,
dark to dark.
And I just remember we get down in there, and I'm like, we're wasting our time down in here. There's no elk tracks down in here.
I'm like, there's a little saddle and a bump we could go to and look off or whatever. And we get up to the edge and we're like, I don't really want to.
I mean, this area is pretty, there's a lot of land there.
Yes.
But it's like thick timber, so it's not like you can really spot. Basically, you're either going to wait till dark or light, see if you can catch something moving, or in the rare chance you take like a 30-30 down there and run through the brush, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was just super thick.
It was.
And so it was discouraging because we're putting all this effort out. We're walking and we're not seeing any tracks. And so we're like, well, let's go down a little bit further. Maybe get to that public-private line and see if anything's kind of crossing in there.
And we can look for tracks in the snow.
Yeah.
It was kind of we walked over. I remember looking at it and it was like, I don't want to walk down this big saddle and up to this point. And I remember finally, I don't know if it was you or me, but we're just like, screw it.
Yeah,
why not?
We're here. We're not going to come back here.
We're not coming back. So let's try it. And we walked down about 60 yards below us. You couldn't see from where we were standing. We crossed a whole herd of elk tracks.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh shit.
Here
they are. But one thing I mentioned when we crossed them, I'm like, they're not, like when elk feed through an area, they're very spread out, not organized. Where like deer, I think tend to, when you watch them move, they move more together. Like one will kind of follow the other. Elk necessarily aren't that way unless they're kind of spooked. If they're spooked, they definitely
single file.
Yeah, and they were, well, those tracks were pretty single file. Not exactly, but they were pretty narrow for as many as they were. And I'm like, I bet those guys bumped them the day before or something. They were getting out of here. But they might be in the area. Let's go up on this point and let's just wait till evening up here. Eat lunch and glass.
Can we talk about this point? Because it was like, on the map, it's like, you know how to read topo lines.
Yep.
And looking at the map, you're like, this point looks like the ultimate glassing location.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks like it's going to get you high enough where you can see down and see
360 degrees around you.
Yeah, which like when you're hunting, how often do you actually find a spot that's...
Never.
Yeah. So we're like, yeah, let's go up there, cross that saddle.
We get over to it, and it's one of those flat tops, and it's cliffed out on all sides. So it really is like normally you get to a hill, and if it's timbered on one side, you kind of get windows to glass through, but you can't see. This was cliffs, so you could just literally you go to the edge and you could see.
Yeah,
it was perfect
all around.
And we climb up there, and I was the first one up. As soon as I get up there, I look down. There's weird tracks on the ground. And they're people tracks. Somebody was in there all day the day before.
All day. I mean, there's tracks every square inch of that flat top.
And that night before where you saw all the turkeys,
mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on that other point, someone was down in that area, and they shot probably 12 to 18 times. Like, I didn't keep count, but it was a lot. So I don't know if those tracks were from those guys and they bumped those elk that we saw and they were just shooting wildly because there was no blood or drag marks.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look like they shot anything down there, but I kind of feel like they were sitting up there throwing lead and unsuccessful.
How discouraging
demoralizing.
Is that? Yeah. You put this effort out, you're walking, you finally find elk tracks. Okay, well, I'll glass. And you're like, wow, this is an unbelievable spot to glass. And then there's people tracks caked everywhere. And no sign of elk anywhere.
Mm-mm. Besides the tracks that they probably spooked.
Yeah.
Coming in. So we ate lunch and decided to just kind of head out. Let's go to this different area right before dark.
See if you can catch something moving.
So we start heading out. Garett wants to walk this one edge, and I'm like, well, where we're going to pop out is like 1.5 miles from camp. Why don't I just head to camp and grab a 4-wheeler and come back and get you so you can glass this, but I'll, and we come up over, we split up, and not too long after we split up, there's elk tracks everywhere. And that's where they were the day before.
Everywhere.
And it was like, if those guys wouldn't have drove in at dark.
I mean, it was right where those guys walked is where we found
Yeah, and they bumped those elk out of there.
100%.
That's what happened.
But after we split, because we saw a few elk tracks when we were together, then we split. And then I found like where they bedded. It was like elk
That's
bed,
what I was
elk
in.
bed,
elk beds everywhere,
back and
feeding
forth,
everywhere.
back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like this is
Snow
such a
trampled.
honey spot, and they got spooked out on a what was that? A Wednesday?
No, Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
like, what are the chances of that? I mean, I guess that's public land for you, but normally if you hit not the weekends, you have a little bit better chance.
And then I was having the, what are the stages of grief?
Oh,
You know, I was doing all this praying and nothing was happening. I was pretty pissed at the God up there. Like, come on, man. Okay, I get it. I was a horrible child. Like, you don't have to pay me back for my brother's elk season.
but how discouraging is that? Like, if
It was.
you finally found it, but people
Public
were in
land.
there. Yep.
That's the downside.
You love it
Yep.
and you hate it.
Yep.
But I'm continuing my walk, and you must have got out earlier. Well, I get to the road, and you're nowhere to be found, but I figured you're walking back to camp, so I'm like, well, I'll walk across the road, go over and glass this other canyon.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to hear you, and then I'll make it out to the road. And I go over, I'm glassing the canyon. Then pretty soon I hear a wheeler coming. I'm like, oh, I got to get back. And I start walking back, and you just go, woo, right by me. I'm like, ah. So then I'm like, I have a very little cell phone service. I'm like texting you, like, turn around. And I'm like, well, should I walk back to camp? Should I walk to where he's at? So I kind of started walking back towards camp, and then you eventually turn around and came back.
Well, what I figured I'd do is run that road and see if there's any elk moving, because it was getting towards the evening.
Yeah.
And pick you up when I hit you. And when I didn't see you, I thought, well, he either saw something or he's just not out yet. So I flew down to the end of the road, and then I flew back towards you, and then, yeah, you were on the road. And we hurried up, jumped in the truck at camp, and drove to a completely different section.
Yeah, it was that spot that we were at. I think we talked about it on the previous episode.
Where you had that bull.
Where I had that bull in the evening, and it didn't quite work out. So we're like, this is going to be good, right? They're in that area. So we drove to that spot, and it was like, do we have time to get up this hill before dark?
And we ran.
We ran.
And then we split up. You walked this hill out, and I ran down across the bottom and up another ridge to walk and look at that one. Because I was also deer hunting, and that's where I missed that nice buck.
Right.
And I thought, well, maybe he's out rutting does somewhere in here.
And nothing.
No.
And how discouraging is that?
No, I didn't even see a deer.
Yeah, I didn't
It got
either. It was
dark.
no tracks or anything cut any of those fields.
No. I cut some deer tracks in the bottom, but no elk
did
tracks. Yeah.
But discouraging, right? Because it's like, you're just feeling this pressure. Well, I am, I guess, because I have the tag, but it's like, I'm running out of time. It's like, I'm walking all day and I'm not seeing any elk. Okay, I'm walking all day. Okay, I found elk sign, but someone spooked them out the day before.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know this spot has elk because there was elk in there the weekend before, and I get there and there's not a sign of anything anywhere.
Nothing.
And it's just kind of like, this is discouraging.
So, also, I'm leaving the Prague test Saturday. So we go to bed Thursday night discouraged.
Yeah.
No elk there. Where are we going? Well, there was elk in that area the week before. There wasn't any that night, but let's check an area that's close to there.
See if we can find them.
Yeah, because maybe they bumped over to that area. So we drive there in the dark, park, we walk up, we get up top in the dark, and we're sitting there and letting it get light. We got our pack blankets out. We're just trying to stay warm, and we're hearing bugling all of a sudden in the dark.
And it's all of a sudden you're filled with vigor and excitement again.
Yeah,
it's
you're
like,
oh,
it's
shit.
real. It's
Yeah,
real.
There's one in here. It might be a spike, but something's bugling, you know? And so we
dropped our packs.
We did, because it was bugling below us, maybe a quarter of a mile as the crow flies. And the snow had melted for 2 days and froze every night. So it was loud.
Very loud.
And we were worried with our fully loaded packs, because we're loaded to be in there all day in the shitty weather, you know. We were going to be too heavy. So we just took our essentials, binoculars, gun. I think that's it.
That was it, yeah.
And we walked down after this elk, and it kept getting farther as we were trying to get closer, and farther as we were trying to get closer. We finally got to a point, and I had like a mental, I just gave up. We sat down. The elk were supposed to be there. They weren't. It's thick timber, and I'm like, God, you suck. This praying stuff ain't working for me.
It was hard for you at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I'd been going freaking hard And you had too.
Yeah.
But it's
part of that is just trying to stay positive, right? And it's so hard when every chance you get, it's just like not working out. You're playing a game of probability, and it's like, okay, I've spent enough time in here, it should start to work out, and it's just nothing.
Well, and am I that bad of a hunter? I thought I was better.
Yeah. You're kind of shaking your confidence to your core.
It is. And I'm not trying to make this a religious thing, but there's something that I've been pondering quite a bit lately, and it is this: how much is you, how much is, maybe the Almighty when it comes to this. Now, you can be the best outdoorsman, best hunter in the world, but if the game isn't where you're at, you're not going to find them. And how do you differentiate between there's not game here and I'm just doing a bad job of finding the game? You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard.
And that's a constant battle that's going on in my head, because I kind of pride myself on my ability to go out and
find something.
And even evolving from our deer camp, I was the one that really started to like break off from the group, and I go hunt by myself, and I'd walk way back in somewhere, and I was someone that could, like, not every year, but I could go in and like come out and I would get something. You know what I mean? And I kind of prided myself on that. And it was like, I couldn't find you an elk. And it really kind of ate at my ego and ate at my kind of value I held in myself. And that was hard. And that was all kind of hitting me then. Just like, oh, Jesus. Like, it was my idea to drop the packs. It was my idea to walk this way towards this elk. And it's
not working out.
No, every wrong decision. So we decided to split ways there.
Yeah.
I'm like, the elk aren't in this bottom. We need to get up high and see if we can see them moving. And you're like, I kind of want to follow where they went through the timber. I'll walk slow. And I didn't think that was a good idea. So we split. And from where we were, you kind of went straight and I went back, looped around and got on a high ridge. Well, I went back maybe 300 yards and I cut those elk tracks, and there was a lot of them. I cut all the elk beds, and I'm like, they were in here this morning, So I went and I got up on this ridge that I wanted to, and I sat and I glassed a few areas. But what I noticed was how many tracks I saw. So what I was up there doing is not always glassing for elk, I was glassing those tracks to see where they went. And they followed the snow, and then they hit a point where the sun had melted the snow off and there was no more tracks. And while you were walking on the other side, I kept trying to find you. And I eventually did. And you had walked that whole side before I had gone too far. And as I'm coming around the edge of it, I'm like, well, I can see the snow and there's no tracks. So they had to come my way through the melted stuff, right? Through the dry grass. But it turns back into snow on this saddle. So I'm going to walk down to the saddle, and I'm going to see where these tracks go. I bet they're there. And sure enough, I come down the saddle, and there's a whole set of elk tracks that came across this saddle. And it happened as we were creeping on them, we just missed them. And I kind of saw how they wrapped around this big top we were on. And we were going to meet on the south side of this top, and the tracks went around the north side. So I went and met you, and, you told me what your experience was over there.
Yeah, I saw a couple deer, but no elk sign, anything. Not even like they've been in the area anywhere. And there's a couple like kind of hidden rolls that I'm like, wow, this would be a great spot for elk, but they weren't in there. So I was getting discouraged, and then seeing you were all like lit up, like, oh, I found all these tracks. And then I'm like,
fresh, like that herd was.
Is he messing with me? Because we always kind of mess with each other, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely like
Gary.
Yeah. Kind of a hesitancy when it comes to what we're actually seeing. Do we believe them?
Yep. There's always a little bit of skepticism. Until you see the dead animal in the back of the truck, there's a little skepticism.
Even then you're like, did you run into someone that shot this?
So we decided to, how the wind was blowing, instead of trying to follow them, we were going to go the other way and, walk into each other. So we did, and we ended up finding some deer we looked at with a okay buck with them.
Yeah.
But that was like the first buck we'd seen.
I saw First nice buck we've seen.
You saw two little ones, two points?
Yeah, like a little 3 and a 2, I think.
We kept walking, and then this could have been our undoing, or it could have been what made us, we get to the end of the ridge we're going, and there's another set of trees that's a little farther. And it's like, well, we could loop around here, or we could go around this next set of trees and come back. Just make our loop a little longer.
And that's a decision you have to make because, remember, our packs are 2 miles up.
2.5 miles at this point.
Up on the hill, and it's like, we don't have any water.
No snacks.
Every time we stop to glass something, we're like shivering.
Well, I had a puffy and you had a puffy.
Yeah.
Because it was so cold that morning, we walked in with a puffy.
Still not like...
No.
Like I didn't have my pack blanket. That's my baby there. Me and that blanket have a special relationship.
Yeah.
Of freezing up on a mountainside.
So we decided to walk around those trees for the same reason we walked up on that point, 2 days prior. Was like, well, we're probably not coming back here. So we might as well walk and see. And we walked through there, and there was a little bit of elk tracks. And we came around, and this is a burn area. So spotting elk in the timber, too, was, I would say, more difficult than it not being burned. Because it was burned in such a way where the timber or the stumps were all black. Same color as elk legs.
So you have like a bunch of thin trees that are all black, about this diameter of elk leg.
And then the tops didn't burn enough to burn the pine needles in a lot of the area. Some of the area was just burned toothpicks, but in a lot of the area it didn't burn the pine needles, but they died. So they were all brown.
So you got like
orange.
your perfect elk color composition.
Yeah, black legs and brown body, and it was on white snow, and it was difficult to spot them in there, especially if they weren't moving. So we came around this group of burned trees, if you will, and we were coming in, and all of a sudden Sharpies, some grouse, just flew at our face all of a sudden, and that was weird.
Yeah.
And first thing
instantly
I do is
you're like, you locked up, and you're like, why would those fly towards us?
Why'd they get spooked? What's down there? They normally fly away from you. So we took a few more steps, and we look, and there's cow elk coming out right in front of us. And of course, there's a sawtooth of private right where they are, and some of them are on the public, and some of them have already jumped the fence. But the main thing is, after we locate them, we get down, we're looking, bugling. We found them, the elk that were bugling that morning. And this is late rifle season. This is 1 week before season closed. So it was weird that he was screaming, but we kind of got in position a little bit, watched them, and then I'm like, let's back up. We'll come around. We'll come low. We got to get closer because you could hear that bull bugling. If that bull follows some of these cows, he's going to walk through public and then hop a fence. So you got like a 200-yard shot to shoot this bull before he jumps the fence, right, on this sawtooth. And I don't know how long we sat there, but probably 50, 60 elk came out.
Yeah, and that was a cool experience because it's like we've been walking all this, and now we're finally like in the elk, and they have no idea we're there. And I'm laying on my gun, like not laying on my gun, laying with my gun ready, in case that bull steps out. And some of the elk are on public, some of them are on private, and we're watching them, and it was just a cool experience because that many elk moving around, not knowing you're there, it's incredible to be that close and kind of watching them.
Yeah, and we watched them for hours.
Yeah.
And we were both shivering bad.
Yeah, just shaking.
Because I don't want to call it a wind, but it was a cold breeze. It wasn't like a harsh wind, but it's just enough where it was like to the bone. And finally, I got my puffy untied from my waist, and I put that on. I helped you put yours on because we didn't want to move. We had elk 70 yards below us, 45, 50 yards to our right, and then we had a bunch of them 100, 200, 300 yards on this down bottom uphill side in front of us. And so we really didn't want to spook them.
Just sitting there and you're just shaking. You're just shaking. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. And it's like, there's no cover though. It was that area was burned also. And it was like we were at the base of one little tree and no grass, no nothing. So it's like,
yeah, you're on a bare hillside.
Yeah, we're really out in the open.
And that bull quit bugling.
Yeah.
And we waited and waited and waited, and finally the elk in front of us. And this is cool to see, is that there was one big cow towards the top, and I was like, I wonder if that's the lead cow, you know. And sure enough, when she got up, the other ones that were bedded got up, and they started following her, and they were pulling them up off the private in front of us, just like textbook, right? It's like, thank you,
like
God,
stuff you dream about.
You're listening to my prayers. It's been working, right? And there was calves in there and a spike, and the calves were like playing with each other. They were like playing tag. They were running and like hundreds of yards, you know, not just in a little area, just back and forth, back and forth. Well, these calves must have belonged to cows that stayed down on the private, because all of a sudden it was a weird noise this cow was making. I'm not even going to try to imitate it, but it was a weird, long, drawn out kind of tongue rolled mew. Yeah. It was weird. And you were even like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've never heard
What the hell is that? Well, these two calves, when this calls are clear over in the trees, they disappeared with these other elk. They came running back down, jumped the fence, and went, must have been their moms.
Mom's been like, get over here, you little shit.
Yeah, don't you walk off. And then all of a sudden we heard that elk bugle, and he was on private.
Yeah.
And I told you, I'm like, you stay here, because half the herd, it kind of split, right? They went up on this hill. I'll come around how the breeze is, and I'll try to scent bump these elk out of there, and chances are they're going to follow the elk that... So you set up, and I walked around, and how that sawtooth worked on that private. It's like you got this straight line between public and private, right where the elk are, the private goes, boop.
Yeah, little sawtooth
where
they know.
Or I'll do it for the camera. Little sawtooth where the elk are sitting on the private. So I tried to scent bump them, but how it worked in the wind, it wasn't going to scent bump them. But I did come around the backside of a hill, and I saw this whole open meadow that was half public, half private, but it was on an opposite side, so we'd have to walk quite a ways to get to the public side of it. There was elk coming out everywhere, cows and little bulls and spikes and blah, blah, blah. Well, the bull that I was thinking now is probably bigger than the spike is in the bottom bugling, and I can't see him, I can hear him.
Yeah.
But I can see like little bits of elk moving in the bottom. So I came back to you, and I'm like, they're not coming off private tonight. I can't get around them, but let's kind of walk up where the elk were and glass down and see if we can spot them.
Locate them, see if it's something.
See if it's something you want to shoot.
Although, I'll be honest, when we're sitting there and those elk are feeding right by us and that spike comes, how close was that spike probably?
70 yards.
70 yards, that spike. Yeah. I remember telling you, I'm like, should I make it? Should I seal the deal?
Because we've been hunting so hard. Yeah. You know, and the next day we might not see any elk, just how it goes. And the next day also, I'm gone.
Right.
Like, this is my last evening before I go preg test.
Oh, man. So we kind of come around the bottom of the hill and we start glassing back up, and there's freaking elk everywhere.
So that first one that split was probably like 50 elk, and there was probably 70 some more elk down below us. I mean, there was a lot of freaking elk.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all from what the herd we had. This was, they were coming in. It was like ants everywhere. The community meeting was happening here. Yeah.
It's like, we found them. We've done all this work. We found him. And there's a bull that's just screaming, and we can look where he's at and we can hear him, but we can't see him. He's in some thick timber.
And there is a 5-point bull in there that I did spot. A small 5-point.
He was talking too a little bit, wasn't he?
He was, but that other one was screaming, which made me, I'm like, God, there's a chance he's bigger than this 5-point if he's not backing down.
And that's what I found out even with chasing elk is, like, a lot of times those bigger bulls, they're smart. They stay in thick timber. Yep. They don't come out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh man, he's on private now, but there's public all around. You know, we just have to watch him and figure out where he goes.
So we're 2.5 miles in from our packs, probably 3 miles from the road.
Yeah.
And we watched them till dark trying to find that bull, but he never came out of the open because the bottom was timbered with cottonwoods and some pine trees, and he was in there. You could see cows moving in and out, but he wasn't coming out of thick shit. Yeah. So we made a plan. Well, we at dark, I guess we hiked out, and we didn't have lights with us, no headlights or nothing. I carry a little flashlight that I think I stole from a police officer one time. There was some traffic stop and I didn't really see it, and there was this really bright flashlight on the ground in the road, and I'm like, someone lost a flashlight. That's a good one. I jumped out, picked it up, and you must have been with me. We come around just this little bend, and there's a cop parked there, lights up, and Garrett's like, that was probably that cop's flashlight to warn people. You know,
there's an accident.
There's an accident.
Not a free flashlight.
So that's what I carry with me.
It's a nice flashlight.
Yeah, it's a limited
Thank you,
edition.
BPD.
It does say that on it. I thought it was a brand. But I had that.
How relieving it was, though. We finally found.
Yeah, we were pretty in a pretty good mood.
We've been shivering. We haven't drank any water all day, but we
ate a little bit of snow.
Yeah, we did. But we finally found elk, and we're like, this is it. So we're walking out in the dark, and I don't know what your mentality was, but mine was like, we freaking found elk. Like,
my mentality is, we got 3 miles to get out to the truck. We got 25 miles to get back to camp to drop you off. And then I have to drive another 3 hours back to my house. And then another hour and a half to go preg test cattle tomorrow morning. So I'm like, it's going to be a long night. Yeah. That was going through my head.
Was it?
Yeah.
To me, it was like, I found elk. We found it, just a matter of getting in there now. We did the work. We put the work out. We found them. We're golden. So we finally get to our packs, and it was so relieving sitting down and being able to drink water and eat snacks.
Yeah.
I mean, all day in there, you're just shivering. You're burning a ton of calories.
And finally get some nutrients.
Some nutrients to sit down. And got our packs and then headed out back to camp.
Yep. Made a plan kind of on the way back.
Yeah.
We were so far in that it ended up being about a mile closer to come in from the other side to where we found these elk. So the plan, I had to leave. The plan was you were going to go in this other way early, way before light, and get set up, and hopefully they'll walk towards you when they leave that private, because they won't stay there all day because it's too in the open.
Right. So they'll
go bed on public.
On public, the thought. And you said before you left, you go, I just want you to text me. Don't ask me how I did it. I just did it. It was hard.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to text me.
If you get one.
And I'm like, yeah, all right. Well, you left, and then all of a sudden I'm at the camp by myself. And I was so tired that I wasn't like freaked out or anything, but it was kind of peaceful. Mm-hmm. But it's also a weird feeling being alone by yourself.
And then there was one.
Yeah. And we had cell phone service where we camped, and I talked to one of my buddies who been helping me a lot with this elk as far as tactics and kind of areas to go. He hunts elk a lot more than I do, and I call him, and I'm excited because I'm like, we finally found elk. Like, here we go, let's go. And he's just jacked up, just probably more than me.
Because I think when we talked, it was like you had to get up at like 2:30 in the morning or something to get there.
Yeah.
Have time to walk in, all this stuff.
Well, after talking to him, I couldn't freaking sleep. I was jacked. He got me so jacked up, like, oh yeah, let's go. So I got up at 2.
Oh shit.
And hiked in. Well, hiked in from the other side, so the country is a little bit more mild, I would say. Not so many
flatter.
Up and down. So it took me a lot less time to walk in to where I wanted to go. But it's dark. But I'm walking down there. I get kind of where we were at the night before. And it was 4:30. I hear one bugle. I'm like, he's freaking in here. Let's go. Then at 5, I heard another bugle. And it gets light around 6:30, 6:45. Mm-hmm. And, I'm fine. Well, then I'm sitting there and get a chill on me. I got my pack blanket on. Doesn't matter. It gets a chill on me, and I'm just shivering. Then I'm shivering, and I'm like, I'm getting freaking cold. And then I fall asleep, and then I wake up, and I'm just shivering. And I'm like, where's the sun out? I'm in the fetal position under my pack blanket, just shivering. And the sun's not coming up. And my thought is like, did the world end?
And here's what's crazy. So I went to preg test that morning, and Holly went with me, and we were going to deer hunt that morning. It was the latest light because I don't know if it was the cloud cover or what, but like I think shooting light's right. You're like 6:45. It really didn't get light enough to see till like past 7.
Yeah.
It took forever to get light.
I was freezing, and I'm like, then your mind starts working. You're by yourself, like, did something happen? Why is the sun not up?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, it's starting to get light. Okay, I can see elk out feeding on this field, but I'm shaking so bad in my spotting scope, my binoculars, I can't focus on it because I'm just shaking so bad. So I army crawled back out of there and then started running up and down the hill, just trying to
get your blood,
get some body heat
yeah.
to crawl back up there. And I crawl back up there, and all of a sudden I hear him again. Oh, he's right here, right? So binocular, spotting scope, boom. There's elk moving. There he is. I see him working back and forth. I see him bugle a couple of times, and it's a nice bull, like not huge or anything, but like a mature bull. What I was looking for, 1,000 yards on private.
And
right?
you hadn't shot a mature bull,
no,
yeah. So
yeah, and like, well, I'll just watch him. He'll come up and he'll bet on public, and I'll just get between him, where he's going and where he's going to be at night, and that's where I'll wait for the rest of the day. And he kind of disappears over a hill, and then there's a ton of cows out on this field, public-private field. Elk cows, yeah. And then they kind of start feeding, and then another group of cows kind of come out on that field, and some of the cows kind of go up. Well, this guy, he disappeared. When I see cows coming up, I never saw him come up. So I'm like, well, did he go break off from his cows and go bet on this side? And then I heard his bugle from the timber on the other side where the cows went. So I'm like,
so he didn't go across the top. He snuck around in the timber.
Yeah, he snuck around in the timber. And I'm like, this is it, you know. He's bugled. I know exactly where he's at. I know where he's feeding. I'm going to go sit on this roll, and then right before dark, when he comes out, I'll crack him. And then I was just about ready to go kind of cross the bottom, get back to this other public. And then there's some cows that pop back out, and they're feeding on that field. And it's like, well,
can't move.
You don't
want to
I got to wait.
Patience. Learned a lot of patience on these trips.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, then I hear him sounding off, and I'm like, God, he's right in there, you know, but I just can't move. I can't move. But I'm just glassing, see if I can see anything moving. Then I see it. The army of orange.
Public land.
And you can tell someone hunting level by what type of orange they're wearing. Like,
yeah,
I
judge people on their
maybe that's not
orange.
right, but like you have like the $2 Walmart orange and like the $5 Walmart orange hat.
Well, and I wouldn't say the Walmart. For me, it's more of like, because I think the orange I wear for the last 10 years have been Walmart orange, but it's the amount.
Yeah.
When you got orange from your head to your chest to your pants to your socks to your boots, it's like, who's this dipshit out here?
Yeah.
You know, as long as you have, I think it's 400 square inches.
Yep, I think that's what the reg's saying.
You're good. But and also that indicates out of state hunters, because they typically have to wear more orange. But that's another thing I would like to mention here, and I know we're kind of biased on it, is the amount of out-of-state hunters that we've run into. We saw more out-of-state hunters hunting deer and elk than we saw in-state hunters.
Yeah.
And that baffled me. It was like, this should be the other way around. If there's tags to give out, they should be going to the in-state, the residents. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be going to out-of-state guys. And I know there's plenty of people that did not draw their elk tags in that area. So to say that there's not people putting in there is bullshit.
Yeah.
You know? So a little gripe there, Fishing Game. Fix that shit. Jesus.
So back to
your story. Your army of out-of-state oranges.
Yeah. Well, they're walking down the ridge. The elk's bedded like here, and they're walking down this side of the ridge, but they're looking this way. So I'm like, perfect.
They don't know your bull's in there.
No.
But you're like, fuck, there's hunters there.
But they're kind of going this way. Oh, okay, I'll be okay, you know, and I'm watching them. Then pretty soon I catch something else moving. 2 other guys in orange. Less orange, like looking at them, they have a look like they know what they're doing. Like they know what they're doing.
Or they've spent a lot of money on their gear and they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Could go either way.
And I'm like, oh my, well, those two hunters, they're going to bump each other. There's no way those elk are staying in there. And then pretty soon I'm watching one of them and he throws up his gun and then boom, boom, boom. It's like, son of a gun. And those cows, so it was like me, the cow elk, and then those hunters. Like, they were between us.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they start shooting, all the elk out of that, my bull, everything, comes running down to that field where those other cows are at. And they're kind of running towards me, but it's...
But you see the bull with them.
I see the bull, I see the 5-point, I see several spikes.
So whatever they shot at, they missed or they got a cow.
Yeah.
Or something.
But every elk that was in that area comes running at me, basically. Well, the way that the land goes, they're going to cross private and then cross onto public. But that's like, I can't shoot that far. That's...
In the public you're on is... where those elk are coming across is pretty thin.
Yeah, maybe like
Private to
1,000
private.
yards of public.
Yeah.
And so they come running down, and it's like, I was so mad. It's like,
I can't
freaking,
imagine.
I'm up here. I get up at 2 a.m. I'm in here. I'm freezing my butt off for 3
to have
hours.
North Dakota dumb fuck come in all oranged out, shoot 6 times into the fucking woods and
Spook these
scare
elk that
all my elk.
that I was on the day before watching them, waiting for my opportunity. But I'm like, well, there's a chance that they would be on this public, even though it's not that wide, you know, and I have to walk that way anyways. So I kind of creep along and find some tracks, but it's like they're on a private.
Mm-hmm, they're gone.
I'm like, well, that sucks. I got to head home to the truck. I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of the day. Spent all this time, all this effort, finally found elk, and then the army of orange showed up.
And fucked you.
Yeah, hard. And so I'm like, all right. So I'm just walking out back to my truck, and all of a sudden, boom, there's an elk right in front of me, probably 230 yards. So I get down, get my gun on my...
Does she have you busted?
Nope.
Okay.
Get my gun on my tripod, sitting there and waiting. I'm like, well, I don't know if this is the end of the group or the beginning of the group, but this has to be the elk that were spooked out of here. So, you know, I'll just sit here and wait. And that was cool because they're kind of feeding below me and then coming up, and they're coming up like on all sides of me, you know. And I'm like, well, don't go that way because then you'll win me and then you'll get out of here. But I'm just waiting. I'm like, well, maybe this is the tail end of the group. Maybe this isn't the front group. You know, no one knows where that bull's at. Well, then they're kind of feeding up. Then pretty soon, like a calf's running, then a cow's running. Kind of not from me, but they're spooked up or something, and they're running. And then all of a sudden, I see that bull in like a group of cows running, and I'm like 230 yards trying to put my gun on him, and he's running, and it's like I just didn't have a shot. He didn't stop in an opening, and it was just like
through the timber, through other cows,
and all those elk. It's weird. It's like the elk further down spooked, and then they all went, and it was just like that's so frustrating.
North Dakota orange man.
I was like, there's no way I'm getting another opportunity. Okay, I have another opportunity, and then it just.
Not really an opportunity.
No.
You just got to see him again.
Yeah, I got to see him again.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, this land's not that thick, but maybe maybe I'll get a shot on him or something. You know, maybe they didn't run too far. So I pick up my stuff and I start walking, and then there I see it. I'm busted by a cow. And I, son of a gun, you know, and I.
Now you fucked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I sit down and I throw up my binoculars and I see that cow, and then that bull steps out.
Ugh.
And it was like, I don't know exactly what happened. Let's be honest.
You haven't really explained it to me. I'm having a hard time comprehending it.
But this bull steps out. Go time, right? It's a far shot. Get on my tripod. Boom, shoot. And thwack. I mean, you can hear it hit. Like, heck yeah. And he's like stumbling and stuff. Well, the guy that's been giving me all this advice has always told me, like, they're tough. If you put one in it, put another one in it. So I throw another shell in it. Boom, shoot, miss. But by that time, it was stumbling and fell over. And then it was like, holy crap, I just shot a bull elk. I just shot a freaking bull elk. I pull out my rangefinder it, 425.
And you've told me this story, and I'm like, where did you hold? And you're just like, I don't know, towards the top of him a little bit. And I'm like, you're dropping 20-some fucking inches that far.
It's just meant to be.
It must have been.
But right before I shot, I heard that bugle again. Like So like I see the cow or they run past me. I hear him bugle and then I get up. Then that cow busts me. So I know he's in there. And what are the chances that it worked out? Then I was shooting through timber. Like he was just in the right opening and I just whacked him. I took a video of me walking up. I'm like, I just shot a bull out. Holy kick. I just shot a bull out. And it was like, this is just incredible. It sucks you weren't there to appreciate it.
I put in a lot of work to miss it. Yeah.
Well, so I go up to the bull and I'm just like, I'm jazzed, right? Like, what are the chances that they get spooked and they run through this little sliver of public that I'm hunting and
G.O.D., man. You got them North Dakota hunters there, spooked them right to you.
So first thing I did is I took out my phone and my Zolio and I texted you. I said, don't ask me how I did it. I just did it. It was hard and I sent you a pin. I'm like, well, great. When he's done preg testing, he'll come help me pack this sucker out. And I've never gutted an elk by myself before on a side hill, and it was a pain.
With no timber. It was a bare side hill.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you could tie his legs off to timber or anything. Yeah.
So it was definitely not my best gutting job because it just took some time because it's like to hold his leg up is even and then.
Well, that's dangerous. You slip, you're by yourself, you're 2 miles in, mile in, however, I don't know how far you were when you shot
about a mile and a half. But you could definitely tell where I shot him. And then as I gutted him, it was like down the hill further and further because every time I spun him, he would slide down a little bit. But I freaking did it. I was just like, I was jazzed. And the guy that I've been talking to is like, I used the gutless method where you split the hide along the back and then you kind of peel him open. Well, for some reason, I'm like, just typically what we do.
It is. I don't know why.
Yeah, cape him and I skin the whole thing.
No, not cape him. We usually skin the whole fucking thing and take the whole hide and the head out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And that took some time. Shout out to Badlands 2200.
That is a nice pack.
Because I put that elk head and his whole hide on that pack. And it's got that meat frame that I could kind of hook his head with. And then the bat wing
it's got
straps.
That not frame, but like meat
shelf.
Yeah, it's just that orange thing that comes.
So I kind of hooked that, and then the bat wings with the straps. It was too big around. I couldn't hook them, but I kind of hooked it to that meat shelf thing. And that was like, I couldn't believe I got it to fit. But it's like, let's go. And on the side hill, I'm like, well, we've backpacked enough. You just got to get downhill or you put it on. And I'm like, holy crap, this is heavy. This is so friggin' heavy. It's like my legs were vibrating. But okay, I can make it this far. And I had some Bluetooth headphones with me. And at one point I was like, I turned on the hardest heavy metal that I had. And I was just like,
gotta make it to the truck.
And then I had to sit down and take a break. Well, there wasn't really a good spot to, like a rock or anything to sit down. So I sat down. I couldn't get back up. Like I basically had to like roll in like push-up position and try to get my legs under me. But I finally made it back to my truck. And that was just like, I freaking did it. I hope Jared shows up because I am freaking exhausted.
So you drove back to camp, dropped the head off.
Yep.
And grabbed.
And kind of tucked the head where people wouldn't see it because I wasn't at camp. But then I grabbed the game cart.
Someone would probably steal it.
Yeah.
I'd be worried about that.
So grabbed the game cart, went back out there.
And it's my game cart. And this game cart's been on a few adventures with us. It's hauled out some game.
Yeah.
It hauled out my elk.
This game cart, the first thing you need to know about it is there's no, like the thing that holds the handle tight, it flops. And then the tires are always flat. So it's like, it's a good design, but it hasn't been maintenance in so long. It's just been a pain in the butt.
I bought it used.
Whatever you got to say.
No, I did. And then I hadn't put any maintenance in it. So this end of the last season, what I did, because the floppy handle with my deer sucked, it kept, I drilled it and pinned it. So when you straighten it, it pins all together and it keeps it rigid, which is nice.
It's incredibly nice.
Well, for Holly's antelope and my antelope, we used it. But as we were pulling them in, I'm like, do you hear hissing? And the tires, the cactus just shredded them. So I went to Harbor Freight before this elk trip, and I'm like, do you have any like never flat tires or solid rubber tires? Because you don't really, a game cart, you don't really need it to be super light. We're not packing it in, you're rolling it in. And I found some tires and they were like 2 inches bigger than the tires that were on it, but they were solid rubber. But I was worried they were going to hit. And I ended up having like 3/4 of an inch of clearance in the middle, which is fine.
Yeah, good enough.
And this thing's got 4 tires on it, right? And so that's what we brought. And I was kind of excited to try the new tires. And that's what you used.
It was like incredibly better than it was before.
Yeah.
The handle being pinned, the new tires, it was like, man, I can pack some stuff out with this. So I hike in, load up the front 2/4 with the game cart, head back out. And the whole time I'm like, God, is Jared going to show up? I texted him. I haven't heard back from him. He going to show up and help me pack this out?
And we got done preg testing, and Holly and I went out and hunted that evening for deer for her and me if it was big enough. But
and so I made it one trip, and it's dark now. So I'm here, I might as well just get the rest of it out, go back. It's hanging in a tree. I pull the game cart kind of up to the side of it and kind of pull it sideways a little bit to get it turned around, and the wheel falls off the game cart. And I took a video. I'm like, I like your improvements of your game cart, but you fucked me hard.
Because you were miles from in, the wheel fell off.
Yeah. Like, I finally made it. The first trip, fine. Second trip, I'm all the way back right by my meat, and the wheel falls off the thing.
Well, and this is why the wheel fell off, okay? So I got these new tires, but they're different thickness than the old tires. Not just radially, but how thick they are. So I have to space them because they're tighter. Between those two wheels, there's a big lock nut that holds that rotating axle to the main axle, right? Well, if those tires are zipped in where the other ones are, they hit that nut. So those tires had to be out. So I had to put bushings in there. And it's just fair enough where I get just the threads on the nylon nuts that hold the tires. Not. On that one, I must not have got it. Because if you tighten them too much, the wheels don't spin. Right? So they just barely fit. And I'm like, oh, it'll be fine, right? Well, I guess it wasn't. So you owe me a lock nut.
The whole time I'm like, yeah. The whole time I'm like, man, Jared really did his cart well. Then that wheel fell off, and you were like the biggest, dumbest guy I knew. I'm like, this guy's supposed to be an engineer, have an engineer mind, and he doesn't know how to tighten freaking nuts on a game cart.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, what can I use? I have tie wire. Well, maybe 2 miles back at the truck. So I took paracord that I hung the elk in the tree with, and then wrapped it around and made a nut, loaded it on there, and pulled it all the way out.
And we're good.
Worked pretty smooth. But talking about feeling like $1 million, though, I freaking did it.
Packed the whole thing out.
Packed the whole thing out by myself. It was like, it sucked because you weren't there to enjoy it with me, because that's what I really enjoy about hunting, even with people, is like that excitement of like, we experienced that together. But
I wasn't there to beat the shit out of you when you shot him.
Yeah. But it was something cool about doing it myself. Like, I went out by myself, froze my butt off, and made a heck of a shot. Got it.
Did. Farther than I've killed something.
Add that to the tally board.
I'm impressed with you. I still think it might have been the Todd and Moose-esque. But it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
All right.
I'm not going to question it. So I loaded up, went to camp, and I went to bed. I was exhausted. Got up at 2. I shot the elk at 10. I didn't get out of there till 8:30 p.m. Yeah. So it was all day.
So I don't remember what time I showed back up. It's probably like 11 o'clock at night. And you'd been texting some other guys because we had a deer camp semi in that area. And you're like, you guys still there? Who's still at camp? And Dad and I are getting those texts, and we're like, he must have not. I got into them today. He's checking if they've seen elk at the deer camp and blah, blah, blah. And right before I leave to Dad, I go, or he shot something he wants to drive through and show it off. That could be it. Well, we show up to camp, and I don't see an elk anywhere. There's no blood anywhere. I get in. I'm packing my stuff in. I kind of wake you up a little bit, and you don't want to get up. So I'm packing some more stuff. And I come out of the tent and I catch something and I'm like, is that a fucking horn? And I kind of turn the corner and there's a bull elk laying there. And I'm like, that motherfucker, you know, come back in, wake you up.
So here's from my perspective. I'm sleeping. I'm exhausted, so I'm sleeping well. That motherfucker. And then I just keep getting fucking hit. I'm like, what the heck is going on? You mother effer, you got something. You didn't say a word. Let's go get it. And I'm like, I already packed it out.
Yeah.
I texted you. You didn't get my text?
And that text never came through. I still don't have it today. So you need to complain to Zolio.
Yeah, evidently.
Yeah.
But
that would have been a classic.
Yeah. But there's something like, I wish I would have had help packing it out, but there's something like,
Type 2.
I freaking shot my elk by myself, packed it out. Where were you at? You always claim on all our episodes, every big thing I shot's because of you.
This is the first thing.
Well, this is proof.
All right.
I don't need you.
Oh, you need my game cart.
Yeah.
It wasn't on your back.
Maybe I could.
You packed an elk out on a cart. Wow.
Maybe I should invest in my own game cart, one with the wheels that actually stay attached.
You're more than welcome to.
Yeah. But that felt good. Like it was cloud nine. That pressure, I didn't really think about it. You talked about it a lot with your goat hunt, but there's such a weight of pressure when you have that special tag that once you feel it, just such a relief.
Yeah, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
You know, weirdly emotional. Like you see, I don't buy it when you got those guys that are on TV hunting huge whitetails on a private ranch and then they get all like, hot and bothered when they shoot a big one. Well, that fucking big one's been photographed since it was fucking born. They know what field it feeds in, and you go out and you fucking shoot it. That wouldn't tickle my fancy like, and those guys cry, but you do what we did where you get a tag and it's difficult and you're day after day, mile after mile, and then you're starting to get kind of anxiety or stress, if you will, that you're not going to fill that tag. And then you do. There's this release of endorphins and emotion and pressure and all this stuff that culminates and, you know, it's emotional. And I'm not saying like when I shot my goat, I wanted to cry, but it put me in a weird headspace.
Yeah. Because like everything you're trying to, now it's over. And that's even the thing.
Kind of like finishing a book or finishing a series. Yeah. It's like, oh.
You know, you kind of feel empty almost.
Yeah. Yeah, you're happy and empty, and it's very weird, very weird headspace.
Even talking back with our episode of raising your kids in the outdoors, one thing we didn't mention is the thing that hunting teaches so well is like the difference between life and death. Like once you pull that trigger, it's dead, it's done. And that's the same thing when you feel that special tag, when you shot your animal that fast, it's over. All this work, it doesn't matter, it's over. Whatever happened.
Yeah,
but such a cool. I don't really like that feeling, to be honest, because it's like, well, I like the feeling after I shot it, but the stress leading up to it's like, man, I don't like it.
It's like I wouldn't want it to go away though, because it like makes it.
Yeah.
You know, can't have the good without the bad type of thing. But yeah, you got the elk. I put in all the work and I got none of the reward.
No.
I guess I had some elk steak the other night. So there's a little bit of a reward, but
it's like a reward.
The next morning sucked. We decided to get up and hunt deer, and it was like a snowstorm. It was cold as shit. We saw more out-of-state vehicles driving around than I don't think we saw a deer. So we ended up heading home, packing up.
My favorite thing is we're out driving wheelers farther than we probably should have in that weather. I mean, it was cold. I was layered up and still shivering. But you get off our wheelers and kind of jumping back and forth.
And I'm, to warm up because I'm freezing. Yeah. So jumping around, I kind of start dancing.
Yeah. And I'm like, do a dance. He starts dancing.
Filming. Yeah.
And then a truck pulls up right there. And you're like, did you just make me do a TikTok dance in front of somebody?
Yeah. Fucking right.
I'll put that video up.
Yeah.
But
it's a good trip.
What a roller coaster of emotions, though. From trying to everything working out right to be able to seal the deal. And I do miss that you put in all that work, but you didn't get the excitement, or I think you would have even enjoyed to pack it out because you like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a disappointment, but I also was like, my prayers were answered. You got one. You know, I'm like, this guy deserves one. And something that's kind of hung over me for a while, and I know it's not quite equivalent, but you did help me with that mountain goat, like unbelievably.
Yeah.
And so, not to say that this elk was quite equivalent, but it helped. It made me feel better because I felt like I owed you one for the longest time.
Yeah.
You know, so this helped that kind of feeling go away. Like, you know, I put a lot of time in.
And that's kind of a deal we have between us. It's like one of us draws a special tag.
Yeah.
We have to do that.
Yep. Yeah. So, and then it was Thanksgiving week, Thanksgiving break, and a few more days for us to try to fill deer tags. I ended up going up.
We went Thanksgiving morning, went out duck hunted.
Yeah, because that was fun.
Yeah, any day you have off is a good day to get out.
Mm-hmm. And that was Thanksgiving morning, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We ate Thanksgiving dinner. It was good, and then went to bed, and then I got up at 3 a.m. and I headed out because I wanted to get where I was going before light. And I did. Friday, I hunted all day by myself in an area, and it's like flipping a switch. There was deer everywhere. You know, I got some cool pictures of some bucks. I messed around with one nice 3-point I think you've had a picture of, and then I didn't get a good picture of, but there was this, I think he was a 2x3, but his 3 side, you know, was this little crawdad, but he was outside his ears by inch and a half. Heavy, old Roman nose. Just like when you saw his frame, you're like, holy shit, that's a huge deer. Buck. And then when you look, he's a 2-point. But he was in my scope quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like I was practicing shooting him. Didn't have bullets in my gun, but I was breathing and clicking my trigger, you know, cycling, and like I thought about shooting him a lot, but Holly and you and Dad were coming up the next day, and I was in all these bucks, and I'm like, there's another area I want to check that in my head I fantasize there's big deer there. We saw a 6x6 there one year, but he was a young, and we're like, God, he'd be sweet.
One more year, he would be sweet.
So in my head, I'm like, he could be in there, you know, and so I watched these nice bucks all day, clear till dark, and I walked out and went to the hotel, and you guys met me there that night. And the next day we decided instead of where all those bucks were, we were going to go check the other area because I passed on all those bucks. If there was one I was going to shoot, I would have shot it. They'd be good for Holly, and they were good bucks. I'm not going to lie. Like, you probably would have been happy with them.
Not 3-point, definitely.
Yeah. So, but we wanted to check this other side. So we decided to go this other side. And as we're pulling up, there's a big herd of deer just on the side of a fence we can't hunt. And there's a buck with them. It's a nice 3-point buck, but they're on private. So we drive in to go in the gate. And as we're going in the gate, you pull up and you're like, Dad and I are going to road hunt. And I get it. You are probably burned from your elk. I was burned from your elk. You know, we really haven't had a break. And Dad can't walk because he broke his kneecap. So
the main thing was we wanted to get signed into the area that could hunt.
Oh, yeah. So I had verbal permission, but you hadn't signed the slip yet.
Right.
So you wanted to go sign the slip. And you're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to go shoot this buck over here. Well, meantime, as we're talking, I look over. The big group of deer's on the land we can't hunt with that nice 3-point, and there's another deer with a buck on her, and he's got trash on his horns. And I'm like, boom, I'm going to go shoot a deer, right? If it's got trash, it's... So we backed up. You took off to go sign in, and we drove up, got to where this buck was, and I told Holly, I'm like, look, if I don't want to shoot it, you can shoot it, but I've been hunting hard this whole year, like... There's plenty of bucks for Holly. If this is one I want, I'm going to shoot it, right? And we get up to it.
You learned on the antelope.
Well, she did shoot a huge antelope.
Yeah.
Like, she did. And then I couldn't find one.
Yeah. You learned.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. That's hard because antelope's the first day and deer, this was the last 2 days, you know, so it's a little different. Like with that antelope, I have all season, but this deer, it was like, there's 2 days. If it's something I want to shoot, I'm shooting it, you know? And so we go to get on it, and it was just in this flat open prairie is where we're hunting. So there's not cover. It's just kind of gradually rolling hills. And we get up close enough, 200 yards, and I throw my gun up, and he just had like one extra kicker on his back, but he was kind of close together. So he looked like he had more trash, and been a good buck for Holly. Her biggest buck for sure. And I'm like, okay, let's go get him. And he was going, we're going to have to run because they know we're on them. They're not spooked, but they're just kind of walking fast, staying just in front of us. But we got to get on him. So we were working that way, and we get kind of to spot him, and Holly I'm in shape. Yeah. Holly's not as good a shape as I'm in. You know, I've been doing this since September, really. And so we kind of sit down. She's catching her breath. Well, I look up, and that herd of deer is running. So it must have been spooked from the road or spooked from us chasing these other deer. And nothing. And then I catch some movement to my left. That nice 3-point left those does and hopped the fence and is like running to us or trotting to Holly and I. Doesn't know what we are, or I don't know if he's trying to chase the deer behind us, what he's doing. I go, Holly, there's another nice buck. It's coming in on us. And it came walking up, trotting up, and it was one of those frustrating things where he's within 100 yards. I think she shot him at probably like 50 yards, but we're talking like 100 yards, 90 yards. And I'm like, do you see him? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, put him in your scope. And she's like, I can't find him. She's pointing the wrong direction, you know, looking up. Yeah, I see him. I can't find him. And I'm like, oh Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? It's getting to the point where it's like, maybe I'll just shoot and, you know, help her out. Come on, you could do it. And she's getting stressed. She can tell that I'm getting a little like, you got to make it happen, you know. And he steps out, and I go, if you can see him, shoot him. She, I got him. Boom, dumps him, you know, which was nice. And so that's how she got her 3-point. It was walked right up to it. Was perfect. Yeah. Again, I've been praying so much, and I even prayed for Holly when we were Brandon or Prague test, and I'm like, if you can just help her get a deer, you know, and help me get a deer, but Garett get his elk, Holly get a deer, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but you tell me how many times you've had a nice buck. You're out in the open prairie and a nice buck walks up to you. Yeah, no. Right? There's got to be something a little divine there. So,
that or chronic wasting disease.
Yeah. Well, we'll know when we, you know, butcher them tomorrow. So anyway, she shoots her nice buck, and she's tickled. It's her biggest buck. We take pictures with it, and then we go back to the truck, and she had her little pug, Rube, the boob, and Forge obviously was there. And we let them out of the truck, and Forge, he heard the gunshot. He knew something's dead. So we get the game card out, and we start heading back, and Forge is just gone. Well, not gone, but he's probably 100 yards ahead of us, sniffing my tracks, following me back, like, where's this? And he spots it and goes, and he's all excited, you know, and we get some more pictures and get it gutted. And then I made her pull it back in the game cart. Like, I helped her a little bit going uphill, but no, she did all the work. And
we also need to mention that the nut was still not replaced. It was the paracord that I tied on the game cart.
Yes, it was.
And it held.
It held. Because you guys were supposed to bring me one, and we couldn't find one that fit it. So, we loaded her deer up and kind of called you guys, and you were like, well, we're going to go over here and hunt, you know. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to walk into this area that we were planning on walking into before we found this deer for Holly. So Holly and I pull in, and Holly's still jacked up and jazzed up, and bless her soul. And we pack up, and we decide to leave Rube. I mean, it's too cold for that dog to be out for an extended time, right? Even when we went to get her deer, we ended up having to put her in the backpack because she just got too cold. So we left her in the truck, but we had lots of blankets, and she would have been fine, right? Even if it got cold as shit out, she would have The wind's not on her. She would have stayed just fine and warm. So we go on this walk, and I tell Holly we're going a giant loop. We'll loop around this, and it's like a very cool Badlandsy moonscape area, and it's just so, like, you think it's flat, but if you walk it, it's like down and up, but it does it so often that it looks flat. And we're going to walk this whole ridge stuff clear around back to the truck. So we're walking, and we get a little ways in, and there's no deer tracks where there's normally deer tracks. Well, then we catch a set of 2 tracks, and I'm like, this is that non-typical buck and that doe, because this is kind of right where they would have popped out. And so we followed their tracks kind of because they followed where we were going to walk, and we come over and nothing, and we get up high, and I set my spotting scope up, and I'm like, all right, let's find some deer. And I scan all the land we can hunt, and there's no tracks and no deer. I check all the spots when I've been there before, there's deer that hang out, nothing. So then I start looking towards the land I can't hunt, and there's deer out in the open in the prairie feeding, but we're across the fence. And sure enough, it looks like there's that non-typical buck out there. When I say non-typical, he just had one kicker. He's not, the cover of a magazine type buck. So, and Holly is notorious for having a horrible sense of direction. She's just like, she can navigate in cities well. She grew up in a city. I can't. Like, I have a hard time in the city if I've never been there. But you drop me in the woods, and I have a sense of where I started, where the truck's at, all this. So keep in mind we're walking this loop, and it's more of like an oval. It's not really round. It's more of like up this side and come down this side, right? So we're going up this side, and after glassing the deer, we walk a little bit more, and she's like, oh, so are we going to come up over this hill, and that'll be the truck? And I'm like, no, Holly, the truck's way behind us. And she's like, it just devastated her.
That's the worst news she's ever heard.
Oh, yeah. I guess she was thinking the truck. Well, she already shot her deer, so she's just going with me. I think I don't know how, she claims I lied to her. I told her it's a loop, and I'm like, Holly, we haven't turned a corner yet.
It's on the straight part of the loop.
Straight. And she's like, it just devastated her. And then I didn't think about it. I'm so used to this, and really since that elk hunt, I haven't been packing food with me when I'm doing these just day walks, and I'm not maybe a mile from the truck, so I'm not, it'd be different if I was going in and packing and something like that. So I'm not really bringing water or food. When it's that cold out, I don't drink a lot of water, and I don't eat a lot of food. Well, she needed her glucose, apparently. It was the worst news she had heard. You lied to me. And I'm like, well, we got to walk up and around this corner. And she was not happy with me and kind of being boisterous. And
I'd really like to get her perspective on this.
Apparently, I was being a dick. And I probably, at one point, she was kind of shouting and mad at me. And I'm like, I'm just going to leave you. I'm trying to deer hunt here. You can follow my tracks in the snow. So I just started hunting. And she, I'm a little faster walker than her. So she followed me about 50 yards behind me. And then if I'd stop, she'd stop. She wouldn't get close to me, right? So then one time I thought I'd kind of screw with her, and she can follow my tracks in the snow. Well, there's this like brushy area where you can't see snow. So I walked in there, and I walked a bunch of circles, and then I found some brush and walked out that way. So if she got to it, like my tracks disappear, right? But I could still see her.
That's a husband quality right there. So your old lady lost.
This is kind of like open prairie,
yeah,
right?
She ain't getting real lost.
No, so I'm also watching her. I'm like, I'm gonna get you, But then she saw me, so my trick didn't work.
Yeah, the blaze orange probably didn't help.
Yeah, and so we kept walking, and there's no deer sign. And we walked this last year with you, looking for your deer last weekend again, right? And every spot we saw deer with you, I'd look like deer moving here, no tracks, no nothing. And so we're coming out, and she's friendlier with me now. I'm like, Holly, I didn't lie to you. We just turned the corner. Now we're at the halfway point. We're halfway. Oh my God. It was more than halfway, but in my head I was about halfway. Because on the opposite side, it's not as much down and up. It's just flat. And so we're walking out, and she's kind of shouting at me. Not just short. And I was kind of shouting back, but I'm like, oh, you got to keep your voice down. I'm still deer hunting. You know what I mean? And we kind of walk out over this hill, and it's these two hills. I call them the boobies because they look like two boobs, and
real mature there.
Well, there's always deer in the cleavage.
Oh my word!
All right, but that morning when I sat across, I glassed them. No deer in there, so I wasn't really like thinking there was deer in there. But as we're coming up, just naturally, I'm like, okay, there's normally some looking, and she says something loud or whatever, and I take one more step and look down. There's a deer coming out. And I'm like, I just drop down. Well, she's well trained or, knows what she's. So as soon as I drop, she drops. Well, Forge wants to see what I drop for. So he walks up to the top hill and sits down. I'm like, God damn it, dog, Well, it was a little 2-point. Well, it's walking and then it kind of comes into focus. There's some more deer. And all of a sudden there's this big mule deer buck, tall. He wasn't a super wide, but tall and heavy. And it didn't look like he had a ton of points, but he just was like...
Had that frame that got you excited.
That's a shooter buck for sure. Not just on the last day. That's like... I haven't seen mature deer like that very often the last handful of years. So I range them. They're at 250 yards, standing broadside. So I throw my tripod out, throw my gun up, and I go to put it on. His doe kind of takes off. She's nervous. She's trotting. So I'm following. They stop broadside again. It's 350 yards, but the wind's blowing, and I'm like, I'm up high. It's snowy. I'll be able to track. I'm like, I don't want to make a rash shot just to shoot.
You have time.
I have time. So I watch them where they go, and they walk over, and they come around this thing, and then they disappear. And I'm like, okay, I know where they disappeared. I'll catch their tracks, and I'll just follow them slow till I find him. Holly, in the meantime, I'm like, Holly. Again, she's not great at direction, right? I go, Holly, do you see the truck? You can see the truck from here. And she's like, I can't see the truck. And I'm like, all right. There's kind of a sloping hill, and it kind of comes down, and then a sloping hill up right in the middle of those two. Just walk straight. Their truck's right there. She's like, all right. So she takes off because she was done. She couldn't. I knew I'd probably be here till dark tracking this thing. So I take off after these deer quick, and Forge and I do, and she heads towards the truck. I should have let Forge with her because if he found our tracks, he would follow them back to the truck. No. Forge is good with that, right? So I'm going down. I'm looking for these deer. I catch their tracks, and I look up, and the truck's this way, and Holly's way the fuck over here. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to have to go find her, But it's not like thick stuff. It's open prairie, and if she kept walking in any direction, she'd hit a county road. It's not like there was a risk of her disappearing. It just was like she might walk a few extra steps. So I'm like, should I go get her? And I'm watching her for a bit, and these deer tracks are below me. I'm like, every second I'm not following these deer are getting farther. And I look, and she's popping out right on the trail we walked in. And I'm like, oh, she'll see our tracks. She'll walk right to the truck. So I'm like, she'll be fine. So I chase these deer tracks. And I don't see her again. And if she was here tonight, she'd tell you she did not understand the tracks. She found our tracks and started following them the way they pointed.
Oh, they walked this way.
They walked this way. And she's walking. She's like, it's so weird. Why did we walk this way? And it took her like 2.5 hours to find the truck. She ran up, swung clear around. Oh, yeah, it was a whole ordeal. And it finally occurred to her that she needs to walk on our tracks
the other
facing
way.
Backwards. Yeah. And that's where we came from. So that's how she found a truck. And that was funny.
Yeah,
because she was
hilarious.
Safe. It wouldn't be funny if,
someone got in danger.
Someone got in danger, but it was funny. She went on her own little tour.
Yeah, walkabout. Wanted to go back to the truck. Ended up being out just almost as long as you.
I mean, I'm like, the truck's right. It's a straight shot, right? Maybe a half a mile, if that, maybe a quarter mile. And when I pop up, I'm looking at her, she just completely wrong direction. Like,
that's good for you being a husband and all, though. Like, seeing her go the wrong way, and you're just like, she'll be all right. It's open. I'm going to finish chasing these deer.
I got one day left this afternoon and one day. And plus, if she got horribly lost, Like I get back to the truck and she's not there. I just go find her footprints and go find
Follow her.
You know what I mean?
She's froze to death.
Well, she had her backpack. She had all her warm clothes.
You're a terrible husband.
Yeah.
Don't try to justify it.
So I followed these deer tracks, and they kind of come around the back of this hill, and I follow them, and they go on top of the hill, and I can see where they stop and run back down the hill. So I watched them go around the bottom of this hill and disappear. And I took off running down the hill. Well, that doe came and walked to the top of the hill and watched me run down to him and then took off. And I'm like, you sneaky bitch.
Smart.
You know? So I get on those tracks and I'm following. And then all of a sudden I'm kind of like, oh, there's a set of like fawn tracks and or you know, smaller deer tracks. And the group I saw, there was that big buck, a doe, and two other like 4-point bucks. Small 4 points, but two other ones. And I'm like, I need a set of 4 tracks. It's a set of 3. Maybe one of them broke off, but I don't think these are doe tracks. I think these are fawn tracks, but these are the only tracks that left that area. Like this has got to be some of those deer. So I finally caught up to them. I look up and there's a deer looking down at me. A little 2-point buck. And that was that 2-point buck that I first spotted with that big buck, and I'm like, oh, here we go. This big buck's gonna step out. I watched him, and I shit you not, this is the like most annoying, funny now, but I was so irritated at this 2-point as he was just staring at me. And deer don't have great eyesight, right? It's more movement based. So he's just kind of staring, and I'm hid behind a rock, and Forge is with me hid behind a rock, and I'm watching him, and his ears are up because he could hear me cracking in that snow. And then you could tell other deer with him because he'd look back and then he'd walk off. And he'd walk off just so I could see the top of his head. And then I'd start to move and he would turn back around. I could just see it, and his ears would perk up and he'd run back to the edge and look. And it was like 15 minutes of this.
Really?
Well, I didn't want to spook him if that buck was with him. So finally he ducked down long enough. I got behind a bigger rock and I got around him. So then when he ran back to the edge, I was already gone, but he was looking that way, and I pop up and it's a 2-point buck, a doe, and a fawn. And I'm like, well, that's the tracks I was on. So
where did that other one go?
Where did those other ones go? So I go back to where they were and I just start doing circles, and I can't find where these tracks. I followed the right tracks. There's no other set of tracks that leave these. Well, as I'm following them, again, I'm going slower, and I'm looking. I look to my right, and there's some tracks that come out of nowhere. And that must have been those. And they crossed. So I was following the correct tracks, but when they crossed, I followed the wrong tracks. So I got back to this cross, and I followed these tracks. And those fuckers looped back around and went to the same hill that I ran down, right? And I pop out there, and I'm following these tracks. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see him. It's kind of open prairie now, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I see a doe in the distance, another doe, and they got me busted. But I'm like 900 yards away. So I figure I'll just walk to the right, and they won't care. Well, they cared. I got where they couldn't see me. I popped up there, deer gone. But there's a set of 4 tracks, and I'm like, this fucker's in this group. So then I just start going as quick as I can, because I'm like, I'm walking down this long, not a canyon, but it's like a bottom, and then it's a long hill. So if they're below me somewhere, they're gonna pop up, and I probably shoot across. And I'm going as fast as I can, and all of a sudden, like, coyotes are howling around me. So I kind of stop to try to listen, and 6 coyotes, they never saw me, filed out just in front of me. This,
were you thinking about coyotes?
I got nervous because I had Forge sit and stay behind me, and he couldn't see me. I had him stop behind a hill, because then I took off running, or not running, but walking fast. Well, I thought, well, if those coyotes find Forge, like with 6 of them, he's gonna get killed, you know. So I kind of called and went back and got Forge, and I continued, and sure enough, those deer popped out, and it was 4 does.
No.
Buck not with them, and I'm like,
got played.
Yeah, and it's getting close to dark. Like, this is the last 30 minutes of dark. Well, I figure I'm only a mile from, not quite a mile, 3/4 of a mile, I guess, from this edge that opens up into this flat bottom. You know, that steep edge. I'm going to bust my ass to get over that edge and just glass. Like, that deer went somewhere.
Right.
And they're probably out feeding in this open flat. So I get over there right as dark hits. It's not really shooting light, but I'm glassing just to see, and I didn't see any deer out there. And I ended up walking out from that point in the dark back to the truck. Never found that buck. And that sucked.
Yeah.
That sucked. So we get back to the truck. Holly was sleeping or reading a book or something.
She made it back to the truck, though.
Well, I came over the hill, and the lights were on, and it was running, and I was like,
thank God.
Yeah, like, how mad would she be?
Yeah.
I was in there till dark for me, and I walked out about a mile and a half by myself, got to the truck. If she would have got lost in a flat prairie and then
in the dark,
got dark, like, I would have been a hot seat. So
that's good, though.
Yeah, it's good. We packed up and headed home, or headed back to the hotel, ate with you guys, kind of shared stories.
Yeah.
And then my plan was to head back there the next day, because that, maybe that buck's back in there, and I was just going to get up somewhere high. So we got up before light. We headed out. Holly wanted to stay in the truck, and Dad even said coming up there, he's like, Sunday's going to suck. It's like 5 degrees out, and it'll be 25-mile-an-hour wind. And so I packed. Forge wanted to go with me, of course, and wind is bad for dogs, but I packed that wool blanket. I packed my down blanket. I packed all my puffy layers, and I took out right at light, walked down to the first bottom, and I'm glassing, because I was going to walk to the first bump and get on and just glass all day was my plan. He's got to be in here somewhere, right? Like, there's a estrus doe in here. He's hot on her. And I put my stuff away, and I walk a little bit further, and I notice there's tracks that I'm walking on, and it looks like doe and buck tracks, right? Because it's like mature tracks and then bigger mature tracks. And this kind of looks like a rutted buck on a doe, and I kind of stop, and I look up, and I see a doe bedded in front of me, and they're 400 and some yards. Not quite 400, 386 or something. And I look up above her, and there's that fucking buck, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I've been praying. I prayed that night that, I would find this buck again. And it's really been kind of this, prayed for Holly's buck. It was gifted to her. And then even talking to God on the drive in there at night, I'm like, it's been a struggle this whole season, and it'd be really cool if I walk in there and that buck's there for me, like, that's the buck I want. I haven't had a lot of time to chase one, but I found one that, like, I want, and this would be really cool. And I walk in, and he's right there. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 800 yards from the truck.
Oh, that close to the truck.
Yeah. Where he was, he couldn't see the truck, because it was kind of as the crow flies, And they had me busted, though, and she got nervous and stood up. And I decided I went right and got behind. You know how puzzly and badlandsy, and I got behind this thing where they couldn't see me, and I ended up getting... He was bedded at 209 yards from me. I got him in my scope now. And that doe's standing up, and I'm like, he's going to stand up any second. I'm like, oh, shit. And the doe bed's back down. And I don't know if this was all clicking to me in the moment, or it was when I was walking back to the truck, or what it was. But there's so many things that I wished for, that I've hoped for hunting, right? This whole season I've been talking about how it never felt like it was really hunting season. Well, that Friday when I showed up by myself and I walked in there and there was deer and bucks everywhere, and I was just sitting there and glassing and like living with all these deer, I felt it for the first time this hunting season. I was like, there was some peace that came over me. I felt this, like, I'm finally living in the moment. I'm finally deer hunting. This is what I, fuels me all year. Is this day, this moment, And then and I've talked to you in the past about this too, and you brought it up with your elk, you have that moment and it's done. And a lot of time with our deer, it's like, hey, you got to make that shot to get them and it's done. And I've talked to like Todd about this. It's like, it would be so nice to be able to sit and watch, appreciate your deer and not have to like shoot them that quick and really take it in. And so, not only was I having this moment that I had been wanting to actually feel like I was hunting again, or I wasn't just going through the motions, but call it divine, call it what, that doe bedded back down and they stayed bedded for an hour. And it was 20 some mile an hour winds and I was freezing my ass, but I laid there and watched that. I got to watch that buck for an hour before he got up.
So to really appreciate that though.
Really, and it makes me think of all these things I prayed for. And like I said, I don't know if it occurred to me in the moment or when it was. I don't really know how that timeline worked, but it just seemed like so many of those wants were, or asks or prayers were like coming true, right?
Yeah.
Like I prayed for a mature buck and I found one the day before. And another thing too is like, I enjoy that challenge. I tracked that deer for half a day and couldn't find him. And then to go back and he's right there.
Yeah.
Like I did all my work and he's right there. And then not only do I not have to shoot him quick or make something happen, I get to appreciate him and really, towards the end of that hour, I was like, stand the hell up. I'm freezing my ass. But that moment got to happen. So in a way, my prayers were all coming true. You got your elk. Holly got her deer, and it was a good one. It was closer to the road, and it was a bigger one than she shot last year or the year before. And, and then it came to my deer, and all these things were coming together. And all of a sudden he stood up and I shot. And
how far was the shot?
About 200. And I think it's kind of hard, when you're ranging. It was 209 to 212, just kind of in there. So I knew I was good just to hold on him, but yeah, I shot him and was tickled to death. Went up to him and he looked good laying there on the ground. And I didn't, I had my pack and stuff with me, but I kind of like to let him fully pass away.
Right.
So, and it was only 800 yards from the truck. So I thought, well, I'll go get Holly in the game cart and we'll come back. So Forge was excited to go up to him, but then we went back to the truck and I got back to the truck and I was afraid Holly had heard me shoot, right? So I get back to the truck and I'm pissed off at her. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, yesterday you shouted, you scared this huge buck away. I find him God put him there. I find him this morning, right? It's up to me. I shoot and I miss. And I tracked him all the way to private. And if you wouldn't have spooked him, right? And I'm throwing shit in the back seat.
Stirring the pot a little bit.
And meanwhile, I had taken a picture of him bedded. And then I took a picture of him close up dead, right? And I gave her the phone and I'm like, look, here he is. And she's like, holy shit, is that a spike elk? And you could put the picture of that bedded like here.
Right there.
Right. He's tall. It's kind of like you could tell if he didn't have a lot of points. He's not a record buck mule deer by any means, but it's just everything I wanted. Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, holy shit, you missed him, Jared? And then she starts chewing my ass, right? I mean, Holly.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so. The hell are you doing out here? This is what you do, and you can't even make a shot.
Plus, you missed that one earlier, so I suppose that was the perfect setup for this.
Yeah. And she's like, and I go, well, I got another picture, a little closer one, before he crossed the private fence, and she's like, is he sleeping? Because, it wasn't a picture, it was a video of me walking up to him. Is he sleeping? You got this close and you didn't get him? Kind of thing. And then her gears were turning slow, but then it was like, oh my God, you got him? And I'm like, yeah, I got him. And so I was happy. We went back and the wind was cold as hell. I mean, it was cold. And we took some nice pictures and got him field dressed and on the game cart and in the truck and headed your way.
So from my perspective, I had to get a paper in for school. So I wake up at 5:30 with the intention I'm going hunting. Well, then I check my email. I got to get this in. So I'm working on my paper, and it's slow going. It's hard to get in the mood. And I'm finally getting in the mood. I'm like, Roland, this makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. And then my phone vibrates. I look, and there's a picture of a big old deer you sent me. Bedded. And I'm just like, that. Then I couldn't focus on my paper. Then it took me like another hour to get refocused on my paper, quit thinking about the deer. And then we got kicked out of the hotel, so I'm in the hotel parking lot still on their Wi-Fi working on my stuff. And then you call us and you're like, yeah, we're just cold. We're going to go eat and then
cold and that deer hopped the private fence. Because I had texted Dad, I seen him.
And I told the old man, I go, Jared's not coming back to eat lunch unless he shot a deer. Let's be honest. He'd still be out there trying to find one.
Yeah.
But how exciting that all that worked out for you. And I guess I didn't realize that. I mean, when I'm in the woods, I guess there's that relationship because I think you kind of find God in his creations. But it's interesting, I guess, because I didn't know you were going through that level this season compared to other seasons.
Yeah.
But we're just thankful for the opportunities we've been able to go out in the ventures and then be able to provide food for ourselves and our families.
Well, like I said, you can be the best hunter in the world, and if they're not there, they're not there.
Or you can jump out of the side-by-side with your socks on and shoot a 360 bull.
Yeah, access has to do a lot with it for sure. But with what we're doing, you're telling me God there was no deer there. And I found the one mature buck in this section. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was no deer. Deer weren't traveling there, weren't feeding in there. But I found one that was in there. And you can't tell me there's not something divine behind that. And it worked out like a storybook, like you'd want in your head. You know, like you saw this buck, you go back in for him, you see him skyline embedded, you sneak into him bedded, you get to watch him for an hour, really take him in, you know, and then you do get him in the end. And it was like ideal, you know, like a Hollywood movie almost. And I can't think that God didn't have anything to do with how that ended for me.
And that's something that I think non-hunters don't understand. It's like, yeah, we go out and we harvest these animals, but there's an immense respect for them. I think a lot of people, unless you actually do it, you don't understand that respect for them and that almost that tie to the greater power of this is an incredible thing to do. You know, I'm part of it all. I'm out here enjoying where that would have to be designed by something.
And that deer I shot was old. Broken down nose. He had scars all over his face. His nose is all ripped up. I haven't looked at his teeth, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, this one is last or second to last winter. I mean, he wasn't. That's the type of deer that I'm looking for right there. You know, and you're right. There is something magical but spiritual at the same time about it. And I like kind of being able to harvest that deer in an ethical, really quick way.
Right.
Because if that buck, he's starving to death and then getting eaten, or he's getting an infection, or something's getting him and eating him alive. You know, it's a slow, horrible death out there. It's not like one day in the summer sun, he takes a nap and doesn't wake up. That doesn't happen in nature. So for me to be able to gift that animal that relatively quick, painless death after it's had a long, you know, for a mule deer in that area, it's had a long life. I don't know. It worked out so perfect. You know, I've shot bigger deer, but there's something about this one that just was like, And it could be the elk hunt too. We worked so hard, and then I never saw you shoot an elk, so nothing's dropped. And then I feel like I'm working hard and not seeing anything, and then this comes up, and it's like
it worked out.
And it was probably the biggest deer we've shot in a few years.
Yeah,
maybe not point wise,
frame wise for sure.
Frame wise, not Boone and Crockett point wise, because he's like I think he's a 4x4, but he's a 4x4 because he's got extra little crawdad stuff on him, but he's just a tall frame deer. So yeah, it was a good ending to big game season for sure.
You say ending, so I didn't fill my deer tag.
You didn't? No.
Well, I didn't try that hard because I have the elk and an antelope, so in my mind it's like that's enough meat, I think, for my for my family up till the next hunting season. So I tried a little bit for deer that weekend, and a lot of it was like bird hunting with the dogs and whatnot. Well, the old man, right before every year, he takes a week off to go to hunting camp.
Yep, and they hunt deer for a week.
Yep,
like all the men.
The Friday
man camp.
The Friday before he was leaving at work, tripped and fell and broke his kneecap in a couple places, and so he's in a brace, I guess, where his leg has to
ankle
stay straight.
To groin brace.
Yeah, and he's extremely disappointed. He's like, because he was looking forward to hunting season. Then you do that, you're not walking, right?
And we had him revved up because we'd been going out chasing elk, and he was
getting excited for it. Well, then that happened, and he was discouraged. Well, I was walking down for pheasants
on this final deer weekend.
Yep,
left him at the truck.
Yep, left him at the truck, and there's pheasant tracks everywhere in the snow, but they're just not in there. The dogs get birdie, but then nothing. And I'm kind of made a huge loop kind of coming back, and I hear a shot. And I look out, and the old man standing out of the car. Come to find out that he was sitting in the truck, an old pheasant started walking down the road and then crossed onto some public land. So he hobbled his way out of his truck, and
he got a pheasant.
And he was just tickled, you know. I mean, he's like, yeah, I got a pheasant, I'm like, when's the last time you shot a pheasant? It has been like 2 years or something,
Yeah.
You're always like not pulling the safety right or pulling the trigger wrong.
Or he just watches them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was exciting on that front too, because it was like, you can't walk, but you were gifted this bird, this opportunity, and you got this beautiful pheasant.
Never think how divine that is.
Yeah.
For him to have that bird walk in front of him and then onto public.
Yeah.
Him be able to get out of the truck without being able to bend his leg and not walk super far, but far enough that he could shoot a pheasant.
Yeah. Silly deal. All in the same weekend where you had that special experience with that deer.
Blessed.
But I can't forget about the most important part when we're driving home.
All right.
We're driving home.
So we hunted till night.
Yeah.
Because you were still looking for a buck / you were bird hunting. And I had a whitetail doe tag I was wanting to fill. Yeah. But it wasn't, I was trying, but I wasn't like
hardcore. Need to get one.
So we ended up not. And we hit dark and we're heading home, and we met up with you, and my headlights are a little dimmer than Dad's, and I'm like, he's like, you go first, I'll follow. And I'm like, yeah, you go first. You got better headlights. I'll be all right. So we headed out on the highway, 2-track, no moon. It's dark as shit.
Dark.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking like they got a muzzleloader season. So I'm pulling up the regs on my phone, reading what the requirements are for the muzzleloader season. Because it's a sickness I have with hunting season. It's like, once it's over, I'm like, what do I do now? I got so much time.
Yep.
Of course, there's like waterfowl and stuff, but I could get a muzzleloader, and it's like, no, I don't need this. But I'm reading the regs on my phone. All of a sudden, Dad slams on the brakes, tires are squeaking, and I look up, and there's
we're going like 75 miles an hour.
There's a Christmas tree across 1.5 lane.
A big one.
It was a large
10 to 12 foot big Christmas tree.
The old man swerves, kind of hits the end of it, but
It must have fallen off of somebody's trailer or truck or something.
So for sure, secure your Christmas trees. But
the holidays came fast.
Yeah.
Well, and we're driving down the road while this is happening in your truck, and we're behind them not too far. And Holly looks over out the window and she goes, "What star's that?" And it's a planet, right? And I'm like, Neil deGrasse Tyson coming in here. I'm like, I think that's Mars, we're talking about looking at it. And I'm kind of looking at the road and I'm looking at her planet. And all of a sudden she goes, "Jared!" And I look forward and you guys hit something and swerve. And I just swerve and miss it and come back on the road and or back in my correct lane. And I'm like, that was a freaking tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, how often do you see a large tree in the middle of the road?
And you guys smoked it.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't hit it square on. You definitely hit it towards the right side of your truck. But, like, shit sprayed everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't tell if it was fluid or dust or branches or something. But, like, yeah, it was holy shit. And it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So we get to the nearest town, get under some lights, look at it, and along the bottom of the old man's truck, fluid all over it. So it actually took out the transmission cooler. So it was hard.
It's cold. I mean, it's like cold outside.
Yeah.
Cold.
It was hard not to say things like, the holidays really came out of nowhere this year. Or, that's a really expensive pheasant you got.
It was.
But Sear calls it a curse. Like,
we always have something. Well, not to mention it, before he shot the pheasant, you were out walking. He looked back and the tire was flat on the truck.
Yeah, he did have to replace a tire.
So with his broken kneecap, not being able to bend his leg, he replaced the tire on the truck. And he didn't have to do that.
No, I would have done it when I got back.
You would have done it. You were walking, but I think there was something that he was like, I'm still capable. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted to be able to say, I changed the tire.
If he didn't want to do it, he wouldn't have
just
done
stayed
it.
in the truck.
Yeah.
So he changed the tire, and we have a curse. It seems like every trip we get a flat tire.
Even with the game cart with the tire falling off at the meet, we got a curse. But there's definitely a level of frustration in the old man at the end of that trip. Popped the tires, got to get that fixed, and then blew out his transmission cooler.
Well, so we go to the store, and we're like looking at it, blah, 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 and after some evaluation, we're like, it's not running out of the cooler. So it might have cracked something loose or just popped it off for a second and it's sealed up now, whatever. Let's buy, I think we bought like 4 or 5 quarts of transmission fluid, and let's hit the road and every 20 miles pull over and check the level and add some just to get it home. And it's cold enough, so it's like, unless you ran it out of fluid, it's not going to be overheating too bad.
Not pulling anything either.
Yeah. And so we made it home.
Yeah.
And I really think when he hit that tree, it might have popped something off or opened something up for that split second, but then it slid back together. Because when we check it the last time in that rest stop, and the level hadn't changed.
No.
And I'm like, I think you're fine to make it home. Like, the level hasn't changed the last 20 miles. Like, let's just send it. Because he wasn't on empty. So even if it was a slow leak, we could have made it home before it was empty.
Before it was impacted at all.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how incredible. The episode before this, we were discouraged, dry, and then after this, it's like we were just given a lot of opportunity by luck or by a divine intervention. And it really makes you appreciate being out in it and experiencing it.
Well, and that's what brings you back next year.
Yeah.
We had a whole season of really kind of disappointment.
Yeah.
But we kept at it, and, then you have a weekend or two like that. Elk and 2 nice deer, so.
Yeah.
And a pheasant for a cripple, So, yeah, it just blessed. That's all I got to say.
Yep. So, hopefully be out chasing some waterfowl, some ducks. Hopefully if we can find a geese field, maybe some geese. I did shoot a swan this year.
Oh, that's what you wanted to bring up.
We can save that story for another time. We're running a little long. But I'm really thankful for being able to do what we can do and share it with my family. And if you guys like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.
Yep.
Share us around on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Really trying to grow YouTube. So as always, I guess, do you have anything else
Oh, I was going to say, we have our email, and you can probably pop it up, that share@bovisonoutdoors.com. Email us, guys. Let us know your stories. Send us in some topics you want us to talk about. This year, we started talking about some issues, and then we've kind of, when season hit, we've been talking more about our adventures. But anything you guys want us to talk about or bring up or keep the conversation going on, there's a lot of stuff happening right now. Block management, there's some river stuff happening in Colorado.
land purchases,
American Prairie Reserves buying more land here. There might be a new state park coming to Montana. Like there's a lot of stuff we want to talk about and mention. So if there's anything you guys specifically want, send us an email, send us a comment, let us know, and we'll get on and talk about it.
Yep, that sounds good. Be sure to check out our website if you want our officially licensed merch. But as always, we will be
surviving the week
to live on the weekends.